Hi, in this video, I'd like to share with you important things you need to know about business continuity in disaster recovery. So as part of an important education on information technology and security, you need to know a lot about disaster planning and recovery for your business that you're going to work at. So we're going to talk about four things. We're going to talk about the cost of disasters. We're going to talk about the types of disasters that can hit you, how to plan for a disaster, and then finally put in some control measures to prevent them in the first place. So if you were in my course right now in my classroom, I would stop and show you this video called How Toy Story 2 Almost Got Deleted. Literally, somebody did a stupid mistake and started deleting all files from the server. Woody disappeared, the horse disappeared, and just by pure luck, they had a backup in an off-site location. And so they nearly lost their business, even though disaster was not in the form of a hurricane, fire, or hacker attempt. It was just a stupid mistake. Now, if you're an IT person, you need to put yourself in the chair of the CEO or the business leader, because your stuff that you work on might be cool and all technical, but really it is a problem when it comes to business continuity. We rely too much on our computer systems to let them fail. So any reason for production to stop will cost a business a lot of money. So whether your business is a call center or an assembly line or a retail center, the technology is a likely Achilles heel that could cost the company huge amounts of money if it fails. Look at these startling statistics about downtime. So if an airline has a delay, it is about $65 every minute for that plane not to leave. A data center has an unplanned outage, that's $8,000 a minute. If you have a factory that is doing car production, we're in the thousands of dollars per minute. And so your IT systems might be an annoyance to you as a computer person, but they are hugely expensive for a business. Let's expand this and generalize it to the costs of 1 hour per downtime. So a small business can't afford to be down. $8,000 an hour. Medium size goes up and large enterprises are $700,000. These are huge expenses that you should plan for and build in redundancies, because saving a little bit of money on an IT system is not a good idea if it results in a problem that causes downtime. So look at IT systems not as the computer itself, but in the business critical nature. So the man with a fork truck, he must be able to register everything he picks up. If you look at an NFL game, have you ever seen this happen where a stupid little computer can stop an entire game in an NFL league? Also, if you have a website that is open to millions of visitors, a one-time or 1 minute downtime can be expensive. Let's say you're in charge of running a printer in a factory. You can't really send those boxes down to the warehouse until they have a label on them. So that printer itself might be a few $100s, but if it breaks, it's worth thousands of dollars per minute. Now, you take a look at whether it's an airline or whether it's some call center or whatever the issue is. One computer can become enormously expensive when it quits working in a critical role. Now, if your business disaster or interruption stops your business for more than just a few minutes, we're talking about the death of the business. So it says here that like 43% will never reopen if you don't have a business continuity plan. 53% never recoup the losses that are incurred by a disaster. So a business literally is going to survive or not based on the plans that you put in place. Unfortunately, this whole business of disaster recovery is not the most exciting or fun or popular place to work in your company. Disaster planning and its funding to go with it is usually difficult to justify because it doesn't really improve anything. That is, until it's too expensive and too late to ignore. So it's like you plan ahead and hope you never have to use it. So let's talk about some of the types of disasters that your business can occur. So natural disasters, of course, come to mind. So whether it's a flood or a fire or a riot or a virus or something that stops your business, that is obviously expensive and it's going to affect your IT systems. everywhere you live, there's going to be those potentials. And so I don't know why all the technology companies choose California to live in, because they have earthquakes, fires, and tidal waves. You've got all kinds of problems there. But we seem to navigate our way to the West Coast when it comes to technology. Now, your natural disaster is one item, but you can also stop your business simply by being lax on your information technology security. A data breach can end your business. So here's some causes of why there are data breaches. You can see that sometimes it's because of human error. More than often, it's because of someone that attacks you, or because a system fails. And so all three of those are problematic when it comes to exposing data that can ruin your business. Look at the cost associated with losing data. So if you have a malicious criminal attack you and steal your data, that's the most expensive. Now, if you have a data breach, you are required to notify the government. You are required to notify your customers. You are required to put your PR people into high alert, because there is going to be not just the cost of restoring that data and compensating the victims, but your business reputation could suffer to the point where your business fails. Now let's talk about the actual planning for a disaster. So when does an incident become a disaster? An incident, might just be an outage. A disaster is a full-blown panic mode. Plan everything, stop the presses, grab the president, put the people in the room, plan for a recovery. So it's kind of a gray area between those two, but we do have to think about the phases of how you would go through a problem. So first of all, we're going to talk about incident management. That's the initial response. The emergency management is the part of, if we have a disaster. Disaster recovery is important. Get the business going back as soon as you can, and then continue on as before. So if you were to Google the idea of a disaster response team, you're going to find that the cell phone companies are pretty good at spending money and planning for outages. After all, they have a worldwide network. They have to have customers online. They have emergency responders. And so I'm going to put some links here to show you some good interviews about AT&T's plans, where they have these mobile units where they can set up a literal office in a parking lot somewhere. After the hurricane knocks out the service, they can come in and recover as quickly as possible. So if you work with a medium to large size organization, there's going to be some kind of a plan that looks like this. We're going to have an ability to have an alert. An incident has occurred. And then we're going to damage assessment. We're going to say, hey, we've lost the network, we've lost the data, we've lost the factory, we've lost something. And then you're going to alert the people that are on your list. So your plan should have a contact list. You're probably going to contact the leadership, the police, the emergency responders, and of course the IT people. Then you're going to set up an emergency operations center. You're going to have the ability to track what's wrong and what's getting fixed. And so you're going to have the command. There's going to be somebody that's in charge and probably not going to bed for a while. And they're going to have people that they can call on. So the active responders are going to be you, probably, the IT people that are going to respond and fix and replace and restore, and they are going to be the people that actually get the work done. And then you're going to have a list of things that have to be accomplished. We need to prioritize what needs to be done first, and then we're going to monitor. Of course, we're going to say, hey, what is working, what is not working, and so that way the leadership knows what's going on. We're going to log the activities, and then we're going to finally update the customers and the stakeholders and the suppliers and the other employees, and then finally we can say, things are working again. When we're done here, we're going to close the incident. We're going to have all the documentation, and the Monday morning quarterbacking will begin. And so what you did is the IT people will be evaluated. We'll say, did they do it right? Did we have the right people in the right places? Did we have the right equipment? And next time this happens, it's going to go better. And hopefully that not everybody leaves the company and the institutional memory is lost. We have ability to learn from our mistakes. So personally, in my professional career, I was in some of these planning committees and working towards disaster. And after I left the factory that I was working in, there was one of those century floods where the entire first floor of the plant was underwater and business stopped. Fortunately, I wasn't there. So good luck to you guys back there that I used to work with. Now, part of the course that I'm teaching is going to have an assignment. I'm going to give you a mission. So I want you to create a disaster recovery plan that includes the networks and the applications, and you document your repositories of where your data is, the business services that need to run. And so you're going to see after this video that I'm going to give you some worksheets to look at and a fictitious company that we will plan for. So your planning project will be coming up soon. Now, there are two important metrics when it comes to expectations of your plan. The first one is called the RTO, the Recovery Time Objective. What that means is how long can we be out of business? So the duration that your critical process can be offline. So this includes the time that it takes to identify and fix the issue and put you back into business. So for instance, if you're a hospital, your recovery time objective is probably 0. You can never shut down. We want to make sure that we can take care of our patients. However, if you're running a restaurant, you can probably shut down for a couple of days to clean the place up if it's really that bad. The main idea is, how long can your business really afford to be offline? Well, of course, everybody says 0 time, nothing at all. But if you're in the military or in medical emergencies and that kind of emergency response, this is critical. You have to be online all the time. And so maybe that's why the phone companies like AT&T are known for their disaster recovery, because they have such a short RTO. The second metric that's important in putting into your plan is called the recovery point objective, or we'll call it the RPO. So a recovery point is how long can you go back and restore service. So for instance, all of a sudden you realize that your server that contains all of the files and data for your system is dead. How far back do your backups go? Really, that's the question. And so you look in your backups and you say, oh, we've done a full backup of the database and I see some differential backups there. So how valid are these? How old are they? And how much work do we really have to do? So that is the RPO. That's the maximum targeted time frame in which data could be lost or destroyed. So if you think that 3 hours is all you can lose for data, then you should be doing backups on a continuous basis and not just a daily backup, because a daily backup gives you a 1-day RPO. So contrast these two things, the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective. So the disaster in the middle here is, of course, the critical point. If we say, how long does it take us to recover, we're looking to the right. And so how long is the business offline before we can start selling things or making things again? That's the recovery time. And then the left side is, how far back do we go if we've lost data? So really that's the backup again. How much time in the past? That's the recovery point. How much time in the future? That's our recovery time objective. And so those two are critical metrics when it comes to making the expectations for your disaster plan, and it will determine a large amount on how much money you're going to put into your DR plan. Finally, let's talk about the control measures that are put into place to make this disaster less painful to begin with and easier to recover. So, for instance, if we have a problem with software and hackers, such as ransomware, we need to have an ability to restore from where we were so we're not paying a huge amount of money to our hackers to get our data back. So also think about your backups and how often you do them. So this is a scheme here for what's called an incremental backup. So on Monday, we do a full backup. The entire database is put onto a file. However, that takes a long time. And so the next day we do an incremental backup. So whatever new data comes in is now in place. And so incremental backups are quick to do, but if you have to do a restore from scratch, you have to first of all do the full backup and then the incremental backups. So you might do one big restore followed by 3 or 4 incremental restores, which takes a long time. That will affect how much time your business can recover and how quickly the RTO is. Data centers are famous for their preventive measures on physical safety. So the last data center I went through, we had to do hand scans, retina scans. We had locked up entranceways where the front door and the back door behind us were locked before we were opened. There is a lot of security in physical environments because there are real dangers. We don't want that data center to get overheated, to flood, to have break-ins. That is a primary result of planning for never failing. Also, inside the cabinets themselves, you're probably going to spend way more money on servers than you think you need to. So if a desktop computer is worth $500 to $1,000 and you are startled when you start paying $10,000 to $20,000 to $50,000 for a server just because you start putting in multiple power supplies and redundant disks and extra memory and things that you just say, wow, do I really need to double and triple the cost of my hardware? Well, the answer is yes, because the cost of your hardware failing can be super expensive, and so you can justify it to your boss that yes, we do need to have redundant hardware. It's super important to have detective measures in place so you know how well things are working and you know immediately when they fail. So you should have alerts set up on all your important applications and your data centers and your databases and your files, so that way when things go wrong, you can start reacting immediately. Your disaster plan needs to have a list of important people that are going to care about restoring service. And so you have an executive emergency plan that is going to say, I want to make sure that I get the right people in the right place and start working on the correct problems. And so a lot of times communication is super important when a disaster hits. So we've looked at 3 of the control measures. First of all, preventive, detective, and then corrective. We've got one more here that we're going to talk about, and that's testing, because all the good systems in place might be good, but they might not be. You have to test them. So first of all, you have to do what might be called penetration testing. So penetration testing is really white hat hacking. You're looking at your systems and trying to find the vulnerabilities. You try to break in. You try to hack the passwords. You're looking for weaknesses. So that way when the real guys come that are trying to break in, it's a little bit more secure than it was before. So you can see some other videos that I've created on how to do some pen testing using different things that are like SQL injection attacks, man-in-the-middle attacks, different kinds of password hacking. And so that's the whole dark arts, you might say, of information security. Also, you need to make sure that your employees are ready. So in school, you did fire drills, right? We needed to know where to go, what the place is. We need to have a checklist of who's there and make sure everyone's safe. And so disaster recovery planning in a business should be similar. Nobody likes to do it. It's boring. It's annoying. But yet when the disaster comes, the payoff will be there. You should be trying failover testing. Literally, you should be able to unplug a server. You should be able to unplug a network cord. You should be able to shut down the power and to see how well that the systems that are supposed to fail over gracefully work. So for instance, somebody in your parking lot digs up the cable that handles all of your network communications. Well, you have a second network communication channel, right? It goes in the other direction from the plant where you're working. And so one line is dug up, the second line automatically fails over, and communications, even though they might not be as fast, they continue. So failover testing is a good idea to check to see if one system fails, does the backup automatically kick in? You're doing backups, but do they really work? And so this picture here shows you've got a tape perhaps that is doing the restore, and it says, sorry, this segment is unreadable. Your tape backup is trash. And so whatever you did with that last tape, you might as well just never have tried. Does the week before work? Does your monthly backup work? How far back do you go before the disaster becomes an actual disaster? So this was unfortunately a painful experience for me, where I was doing backups for a library once. The entire library database was supposedly backed up every night. Until the hard drive failed, we realized the tapes were not backing up anything at all. And so we lost tons of data and had to do a lot of restoring manually. And so I was not a popular person at that time. So make sure that you test your tapes. Make sure that your backups are working like you expect. And the only way you can do that is to try to restore them. You can't just assume that because the backup message said everything was good, that it actually was good. Also think about the team. So the people that are going to respond. You could put them through a drill. You could say, hey, let's get together. Let's see who's supposed to do what. Let's do the checklist. Let's be familiar at least with the documents that we're going to be using. So that way when the horrible things happen, we've at least got a little bit of experience of what a simulation might feel like. And so in summary, let's talk about the 4 things here that we learned. So downtime is expensive. You can justify your project because if it fails, if your system fails, it's going to be millions and millions of dollars of downtime. And we never want that to happen. So make sure that you can justify to your boss why you should spend the money. Prevention measures avert disaster. So make sure that you've got the proper things in place so that way you're ready to fail over. You're ready to restore from backup. You have a second site to do your business from. You have another communications line that's going to work. The second power supply on your server is going to kick in. You've got the prevention measures to avoid the disaster to begin with. And then if you actually have a disaster where everything quits, you've got your team ready to go. You've got a pre-planned response. You've got yourself a reaction that might be just what saves your business. And then finally, test everything. Make sure that you've got your place ready to go and you've tested it, and you can be at least assured and sleep a little better knowing that your disaster might just be an incident. So thanks for watching. This is part of a course of information technology that I teach called Information Security. We cover things like hacking, prevention, disaster recovery, about legal issues, all things related to information security and how it works as a programmer. So I welcome you to look at my channel and check out some of the other videos. Thanks for watching.